Hey guys, Jeff here, and today we are continuing on with our basement renovation series. Today we're talking insulation, how to get the best bang for your buck and the best R value for your money at the same time. We are going to combine my rigid foam with my bad insulation, plastic vapor barrier, and spray foam in the system. This gives me the best R value and heat retention in the wintertime here in Canada, and also makes this basement nice and cool and comfortable in the summer. So we're going to be installing our rigid foam board just to give you guys a demonstration of how my system works. We're going to measure off, I need 36 inches, okay? And we're going to measure floor to the top of that wall, which is going to be 88. There's a couple of different conditions that happen here. One, I got a pipe I got to work around. So I'm going to take a measurement. I'm going to cut to the pipe, any obstructions that you have, okay? And I'll cut it in half. I'm not going to notch around, I'm just going to cut it in half, and then I'll notch at the location. The goal here is to create a thermal break for your exterior foundation and an airspace in behind your insulation. It doesn't have to be huge. It has to be just a little bit. In houses without a subfloor system, you take this right to the bottom of the floor. If you have a subfloor system, you've got two options. You can install the subfloor first, then set the rigid foam on top. What you do is you leave your subfloor a half an inch off the wall. Okay, and you put the foam on top. Or you can put the foam on first and use a spacer block, okay, so that it leaves a gap of about a half an inch at the bottom of the floor, because your subfloor system is going to have an air channel underneath, and you want that air to go hit the block and go up in behind your rigid. And then once they're both installed together, if there's any gap, you can take out a little can of door and window foam, and you can seal up that gap to maintain, because that's moisture control. If you're using a subfloor for any reason other than moisture control, you don't have to seal the gap. All right. If you're not sure what's the right system for you, because it depends on the age of your home, your geography, how much rainfall you get, and a few other little things about you might want to consider joining our membership program. Hit the join button for $5 a month. You jump in, we're on Discord. You have questions, I can help get the right assembly for you and your situation. I need to trim it down to 36. We're gonna take it straight up and then we'll cut the header afterwards. Let's go cut some foam. Alrighty, so the first thing I'm gonna do is gonna cut it 36. The T-square is numbered going from bottom to top or top to bottom. So you pick this side, the same as that is 12 on the other side. And I'm just going to set my knife on here. And the first pass is just the tip, so I can create a groove. It's continuous. All right, there we go. And then the next one is 88 from the bottom. And then the next one after that was a 73. Now that we have that, we will finish cutting through with a longer blade. There we go. What we're going to use here, guys, is PL 300. I'm in Canada, so this is Lepage. Down in the States, you guys are using the brand called Loctite. It's still the PL 300 series, and it says right here on the panel, foam board panels, okay? This is adhesive, and it'll bond to masonry or wood or whatever. Now, this is the front. This needs to be showing so that when you do your framing inspection, your inspector knows that you have R75 board here. If you put it in backwards, they aren't going to know what you're using. You run into some trouble. Now all we do is we're setting up a few dollops of this goo here, okay? And the dollop is the secret to creating that airspace that we want. All right, we don't need a lot of adhesive, especially in my situation because I'm setting it right on the ground. That's why if you want an airspace, you're gonna wanna have a shim. You can just take a knife and cut a little bit of the foam and create shims for it. It's not a problem. Come back, slide it in place, and gently make contact. 2, 4, 6. Don't push too hard, walk away. We're not trying to glue two pieces of wood together, right? We're just setting this in place. All right, now when we're thinking about an airspace, we're not talking like half an inch. We're just talking enough, a couple of blades worth, okay? That's fine. That's what happens. What we're looking for here is the ability for moisture that comes through the wall from the foundation to then hit this, which is a vapor barrier. And if it condenses on the backside back into the stone, okay? We're just talking about relative humidity here. That's all we're managing. And so then stone gets moist, transfers the moisture up in the stone, and then the stone gets above ground, and then above ground is dry, and then the moisture leaves. That's the process. So it's constant wicking into the wall and then back outside again. That's all we're doing when we're putting the foam on. Just a little bit of airspace and you're good to go. Now the next day when this is dry, you won't be able to collapse that hole, so it'll be maintained. So always do your foam board first, give it a day, then frame the house, then it's time to insulate with the rest of the bat. So, this is my gas line, and I'm going to be quite generous with it. 2 generous dollops. Leave an airspace, good to go. The only thing left to do here now is take some tape and seal off the joint and throw a little bit of spray foam around that corner. Seal everything up nice and tight. Remember, we're creating a thermal break, which is a continuous barrier of insulation, and it's also a vapor barrier. So you want to continue both of those systems. If you have gaps, let me just demonstrate this. If you have gaps, you can fill it with foam. Okay. There we go. And this actually creates a vapor lock. All right. There we go. Those are the basic concepts that you're going to need in order to put the rigid foam on your house. The only other thing you need to know is that the panels do have a Tetris type shape, so they're interlocked. All right. So once you interlock them, if they push pretty close, just tape the joint. You don't have to foam every joint. It's not necessary. Yeah. So once this is dried overnight, frame the next day, get your inspection done, and then it is time to add the rest of your insulation. Let's jump into that now. Guys, we're just do this as a two-man team here today. Matt's got a cutting table. I like this because you can line up the insulation on one side and you can throw some numbers across. Makes things really fast. I can just be installing insulation, shouting out numbers. For the most part, they're all the same. Full insulation up to where the electricians put in their wiring. Generally, they hit 47, 48 inches. And then balance to the top, I think 41 we came up with, right? Because we did a spray foam seal, we're still gonna put bat insulation inside that rim joist as well. Because we framed 16-inch on center, the cavity is the same size as what's in the bundle, so we can just kind of stuff and run to begin with. All we do is open these up. Here we are. Let it breathe. When you're doing this kind of stuff, make sure you've got your backing for your drywall already in place, okay? It's a lot simpler. That way we can insulate and then vapor barrier right away. Peg your bat, it should have a number on it. Want that facing out. That is so that the inspector who comes by to do a thermal barrier inspection, the insulation inspection reads, you're 14. They should already know that she should already have seen the rigid foam because the inspection is framing inspection, then insulation inspection. So the presence of that rigid foam has already been inspected, all right? So they know what's going on. They know what your plan is. They're just checking to see that you got the right R value. Here you go. You just stuffed them in. Now, boom, 41. This room has got 2 exterior walls. Come on, honey. There we go. There we go. I'm making a hell of a mess here. And we're gonna need 3 bundles to do all of this. All right, this is the benefit of having electrical done this way. The plugs are way down, but if you run your wire here, it's automatically buried as soon as you put the next piece in. Okay, here we go. Now, you want to have your insulation compressed, both this way and this way. If you have nasty air gaps, that's a draft, okay? Especially near the rim. So here we go. Push it up, make sure you got good contact. Nice and easy, lift, and then set. There, that's a good installation. Now, you don't have to make sure the 14's sticking out on all the bats, just enough of them so that they know you didn't try to cheat and buy a bunch of R12s to save a few bucks, all right? Keep the 14s out as much as you can. Now, finally get to a box. We got something new to learn. When you get to your electrical boxes like this, a couple things you want to do. One, first, line it up, okay, where it's sitting on, making contact. You want to mark the bottom of the box, not the flange. Okay? There we go. So, come up to the table just to make this a better demonstration. There's my mark. I'm going to cut all the way through, all right? And I've got some wiring here, but the box doesn't go all the way to the back wall. You can actually get your hand behind there. So, you don't want to cut the whole thing out, all right? You want to leave kind of like half and half here. So the box is about that wide. Create a pocket for the box to sit, all right? It's just good habit. Now, where these wires are, I'm going to peel the insulation open, make room for them. Okay, come in from the side. Okay, there we go. Nice, perfect fit. Okay, and then on the side, always work your wire into the middle of the insulation. That's how you do it perfect every time. This is the top. Well, that's a lot of business going on here, right? That's a deep box. This isn't, but my well, I don't want to take too much of that away from it. All right, we're gonna eyeball that. There we are. Open up insulation behind the wires down here. This is actually my vapor barrier. All right. I get my wires in here. That's my cable coax. There we go. Okay. Let's deal with this. So I've peeled my insulation, go in front and behind the wire. The last thing I want is to stuff a little piece in here. So I'm going to lift the whole bat nice and tight up here, and I'll shove my filler in underneath. If you're going to have a gap in your insulation anywhere, down at the floor is the best place. It's lower in the grade. We don't have any air movement in this house, and it's always 10 degrees. Our temperature, something like 50 degrees in the States. So this is less crucial to have insulated really well. Here we are. We got our spray foam. We got about an inch, inch and a half up here. That combined with the 14 is what's going to get us to a 20, because spray foam an inch and a half, it's like R10, surprisingly good. It's a better R value than the rigid foam, the spray foam. All right, now, we are just going to take this and we're going to install it to the front side of there. Okay, done. And then when we put our plastic up, we'll just go straight to the ceiling. And around these heat ducts, we actually want to get to the back side. So we want to get this underneath and up around the other side so that we get our R value in behind that ducting. Now we got an R20 separating the hot spot from there. So when we bring the plastic up, our plastic will trim down here. We'll be able to fold it right up underneath and to have that condensation barrier between the heat supply and any air leakage that might be going on, which should be pretty much nothing after that spray foam, but better to be safe than sorry. Now it's time for us to plastic. Really simple, guys. What we want to do is you want to attack each room at one room at a time if you can. But you want to have as much continuous vapor barrier as possible. So that inside corner, we're not going to cut to measure and then try to use tape. Because if you get that wrong, then you've got a concave corner and then the drywall won't fit. You're going to cause issues. And the way the drywall will work is it's going to compromise that vapor barrier. That's not what you want. Corners are already famous enough for drying slower when it comes to the mud anyway. 1, 2, 3, that's 4 feet. 8 feet. 16 feet. 20 feet. 32 feet. Nice. Now, this particular roll I'm using comes at 9.5 feet, okay? It's good because I like to have my plastic come to the ground and a couple inches out so that when I'm installing my drywall, no matter how you cut it, it's on plastic. After your drywall is done, you can then trim off the plastic if there's anything left, but it guarantees you don't have direct contact so your drywall isn't pulling moisture out of your concrete, okay? It goes up, it'll hang over loose, we can trim it back, cut it to fit. We'll show you all this in a second, but that's the basic gist. 9 foot 6 inch. Make sure your room is clean. Here you go. You can just walk that back. Hit the first black mark. Okay. All right. Now, this is how I measure. That's 10 feet. We need 32 feet. Get that down to that marker line again. That's 20.
Right there.
Okay. That's 30. Nice knife. Okay, now grab your hammer tacker. We got some little tricks to show you here. So your staple box, okay? Comes with this cardboard tab for hanging it on the shelf. I like to rip this up in a couple of pieces. Keep these really handy because we're going to use them to set our plastic on the wall so that we can get compression. We can stretch the plastic nice and tight. I'll get you to go all the way to the other end. I'm going to start with about a 6-inch overhang. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift it up and over our heads until we only have a couple of inches left on the floor. So now I'm standing on my plastic, a couple inches. You can use your foot and tighten up the base to you. All right, now we got that nice and tight. I want to make sure that my plastic is past my edge over here, a couple of inches, and then I'm going to set my plastic with that cardboard right here. If I put a staple in, look how easy it is to pull that off the staple. The same thing with the piece of paper, the cardboard. Now, that is pulling tight. Now, Matt actually can pull as hard as he wants it other than to smooth it out. It's not going to pull off the staple. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to go like this. Now we're established. So now Matt can go down to his end and he can pull the plastic and stretch it, knowing he's not going to pull it off all the staples, and we get a nice clean look. No wrinkles. You might as well look professional, because when the inspector comes, if you can have a professional looking installation, they're just going to turn around and walk right back out the door and pass you. Now remember, we don't have to have this tight like a drum skin, right? We just want to have it relatively wrinkle free and somewhat horizontal. Remember, less is more here. We are going to have drywall screwed to these studs. So we don't need 400 staples, right? That's plenty. One every couple of feet. Hold it nice and tight. And then for here, for around these boxes, here's the secret. There's a no tape installation here because our boxes have already got a flange with a gasket that'll be compressed with the drywall. So we just want to simply, because we're nice and tight, cut on the inside of the box. Remove that extra bit of plastic and then now stretch it over the, there we go. Now when the drywall comes, it'll go up against it and they'll have a cutout tool that'll sit on the outside of the box, roto zip around, and then it'll all fit nice and snug, compressed into that gasket. Perfect vapor seal. Now we're just gonna stretch up and out, working the way across the room. In the old days, we used to take our plastic and lift it up and put an acoustic sealant on the bottom plate and then press it in, because that was the air seal. Isn't that crazy? And then we'd have, anywhere where there's a double stud, we'd have acoustic sealant on the joints. But because we use spray foam on a rim joist, all the way over to our rigid foam, we already have an air seal established. There's no need to grab the black goop, which never dries and wrecks all of your clothes, and you can't go out for dinner for a week. Right? This is it, nice and simple. Okay, we're gonna stop tugging around here for a second. So what we wanna do is let that come back here a little bit, nice and relaxed. We don't want the corner tight like a drum, okay? Because if it's tight like a drum, then once they're doing the drywall, it's gonna cause issues, all right? So what we wanna do is just get it here, nice and relaxed. If there's gonna be a wrinkle anywhere, it's right here on the inside corner. Okay, I'm happy with that. We'll get right up in here now. All right. Did we cut this long enough? Oh, shut up. Shut up. So we came up short. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna finish the install to this point, trim off the excess plastic, and then we'll cut a piece to go from here over to here, and we'll tape the joint right on that stud so we can get a good seal. That's gonna happen every once in a while. Mistakes happen, right? So we just have a system to fix it. Here's a scenario, guys, where we're doing a little bit different. We've got a vapor well box. We don't want to come tight to this, because what we want to do is actually install this with tape to that vapor well box. And that makes our seal complete. So I can actually get tape and make all these joints perfect. In this scenario, you bring the vapor well fin out on top of your plastic, okay? And you just tape it until it's sealed. The reason I love this blue stuff so much is it has a really good adhesive on it. So even if you're floating plastic to plastic, there's nowhere to press. you got a great joint. So we have all this extra plastic. The goal is to get it up in that cavity. Make sure you've got staples on the top sill, sorry, the top plate. All right, so it's all hanging from those staples. Take your knife, open just a little bit, directly underneath the joist. You're gonna grab it and lift it right towards your face. And then you're gonna cut right down the middle of that joist line. Right underneath, pull it towards your face, cut the middle of it. All right, that creates the section that goes up in here. That's all we do. Now, this is extremely long, so I could cut a fair amount off here if I want to. So I'm gonna get this up into this cavity. Couple staples and done. All right. Remember, we already got an air seal and a vapor barrier in that, so we don't have to worry about making this perfect. And to be honest with you, it's probably better if it has the capacity to leak a little bit, in case moisture gets into that cavity somehow, has a way to dry into the room. Here's our heat duct. This is where we want to get this plastic in under behind it, right to the ceiling. There you go. Now that's not going anywhere, but for good measure, we're gonna staple in it anyway. We're taking a look at this now, right? That is already all vapor sealed in there, but the back side of this isn't. So what I want to do is take this plastic, put a little bit in there, staple across this, and then just trim it all the excess off and get it out of here, because I hate excess plastic. Nice job making this seal over here. Thanks. You can see what Matt did is he had the old cut plastic line right here. So when he overlaps, it's only like an inch. If you overlap plastic more than 16 inches, you end up with a double vapor barrier, and it'll actually go to condensation in between there. And that's bad all the way around. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll just get that in there. Nice clean look. That'll keep my inspector happy. It'll keep me happy because I hate plastic. All right, now we got to do this, put another 130 feet. No big deal. If you live in a different climate, let's talk about different climates. We have different climate zones as we go down through North America, from Canada, the 49th parallel, upper state New York, you know, Michigan, Ohio. You get into the Carolinas, there's different R values for every different zone. And there's different regions with different climates, right? We've got the mountain climates in the West, we've got the desert climates. You've really got to pay attention when you're watching a video like this. You're not going to just do what I do unless you live where I live. A lot of places in America, you don't even need a vapor barrier, or you only need R10 in your walls. So pay attention to that. This assembly works for a real cold climate, but you might be fine to just put some Tyvek up, put up a 2x4 wall, and stuff it with an R12 mat. It all depends on where you live. So check your local building codes and see what the value is that you need to reach. Now I know that looks a little bit crazy, right? It would have been better to just spray foam the whole thing. However, I don't want to commit to spray foaming here until we lock down exactly what we're doing on the outside, because I might want to cut these pipes, remove them from the wall, do my facade on the outside, and then drill holes and then reintroduce that pipe. So by sticking with this for now, this is a good thermal barrier. I can pass my installation inspection, still have the flexibility to remove these pipes to make it easier to do our installation in the springtime, outside. That's for that pipe. Now, very important, when you're doing a hose bib, the insulation is a couple of inches on the far side, because this area here is where the valve is shut, and it needs to be on the warm side of the room, okay? If I put my insulation like this, flush with this wall, that looks pretty, but now what I've got is I've got an airspace on the other side of that where there could be cold air coming in from around the faucet where it was drilled in. That can cause that line to freeze because it's right at the valve. And then you don't know there's a problem until the springtime when you go to use the hose. And then what you'd have is this area here can be busted, and then pouring water inside behind your wall plate, and it shows up in the floor. All of a sudden the floors are just soaking wet. That's the kind of disaster that happens every year because people don't have this on the warm side of the wall. That's a proper installation. A, it's aqua, so that it always drains from that area to the outside, and B, it's sloped, so it guarantees it's drained. C, we keep this in the warm side of the room, so we never have a problem. That's a 3/8 staple. That's my favorite depth. 3/8. It's thick enough that it holds the plastic with our cardboard, right? If you use 1/4 inch, it's not thick enough to hold the cardboard and the plastic and actually get to penetrate the wood. And if you use a 1/2 inch, you end up with a lot of your staples sitting proud all the time. You got to come back and hammer them back in. Save yourself the aggravation and do the 3/8, because that is money in the bank. I've got a hole here. Want to get tape on that? Really careful. If you get any penetrations, you want to get tape over it. And where the staple goes through is covered by drywall, so it doesn't really have much of a penetration, but that one for sure. Just doing a last minute look. Oh, here's another one. I got a penetration over here. 2 of them. Just run me like a 10-inch piece over those 2 holes, we're good. All right, like we said earlier, we're gonna leave the plastic on the ground. We'll trim this back after the drywall install. The drywall comes down, we do not want to have contact. You want to intentionally leave a 1/2 inch gap down here for whatever reason. I go into basements all the time and I see people who've cut the drywall tight to the concrete. Avoid that, because that's why your house goes moldy. Let's clean this up. Whew, 1 room left. So sometimes the job gets ahead of you. And I had a stud here that was really bowed. And so before the electricians came, we cut through, we nailed it together, but we didn't get a chance to reinforce it. We didn't have strapping on site. So the electrician came, drilled a hole, ran his wire. Now I gotta stiffen up this board, right? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set this up. I'm just gonna notch out a section for the wire. Okay, I'm gonna roll it over, slide it over the wire, fasten it on the bottom. Alternating pattern. Creates that strength of a triangle, and then do the same up here. Strong as she needs to be. We got it in the right way, and then it may be warped. What we're gonna do is cut a 2.5 inch piece. We're gonna wedge it in just to straighten out that board. Because I've got good insulation if I just get that wedged. It's always the little things, eh? There we go, thanks buddy. So I'm just marking where I wanna put my block, because I have electrical running through the wall. I don't wanna throw any nails there. Oh, that's sitting a lot more snug now. Cool. This one's bowed too?
That's gotta go that way.
Yeah, you're right. That'll take a 14.5. All right. That actually looks much better, Matt. One other thing to consider about vapor barriers and insulation is your plastic, your vapor barrier should be on the warm side. So if you're in a little further south, you're gonna find that outside is warmer the majority of the year. Here it's colder the majority of the year. Like we do have a warm summer, but the majority of the year it's colder. So if you're heating more than you air condition, your vapor barrier goes on the inside. If it's the other way around, you put a vapor barrier on the outside. Now your vapor barrier could be a house wrap. It could be just insulation with the paper-faced insulation. And you put the paper face to the outside. It's really that simple. My system, okay, for insulating a basement though, however, is this. You want to seal up the cavity. Spray foam comes in contact with the rigid foam. So it's a complete air and vapor seal. Rigid foam is also a vapor barrier, all right? And that should be taped with vapor tape, spray foamed in gaps, all right? Then we put the bats in front. So any moisture that's in this foundation is gonna go in behind the rigid foam because the way we install it, we have an airspace in behind here. And so excess moisture can accumulate in there. It can go into my brick, that's fine. We're gonna allow the foundation of this house to actually absorb moisture and release it depending on different times of the year. Moisture management means you're not trapping moisture that can't dry out. So as long as my foundation comes above ground, 8 months a year, it's drier outside than anything else. My house can dry to the outside. When it is wet outside, my house can dry from the inside because the rainy season is in the summer. We're using air conditioning. That's pulling moisture out of the air. And so that's my balance. And as long as you're thinking about your balance, you're gonna be just fine. All right, cheers to next time.